As a bass fisherman, one thing that I know is that water clarity can vary significantly from one spot to the next. How do you make the adjustments necessary to catch fish in all those places? Well, we're going to talk about that. Welcome back to another episode of 5 Minute Fish Talk, a show where I've got 5 minutes to discuss all things fishing. Now, this show is actually brought to you every single Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time Zone, so click that red subscribe button below to stay tuned. Hey, shout out to Wondering from Kansas for this fantastic topic. If you have a suggestion for a topic, drop a comment below, and if I choose it, I'll give you a shout out. Let's get started. I just loaded 5 minutes on this timer here. You know what that means. Boop! It's time to get real. That's right, folks. It's time to get real. I love black coffee, but here's the thing. If I was to be fishing in a situation where the water that I'm fishing looks like this pitch black coffee that I'm drinking, I'd be in trouble, folks. I'd be in big time trouble.
What is that?
Why is that, you ask? It's because bass, just like us humans, they have senses, and they rely on those senses in order to feed. What's the most important sense that a bass relies on? Eyesight. Eyesight is what's going to dictate how these fish eat. So, in situations where you have gin clear water all the way up to dirty, dirty water, and everything in between, obviously that's going to affect the way that the bass feed. It's going to affect the way that the bass act. And so with that, as fishermen, we need to adjust our styles in order to catch the most fish that we possibly can. So how do we do that? Well, we're getting right into that. First and foremost, let's do a quick color breakdown on what different types of colors you might want to use in those situations. So, starting with clear water, obviously you're going to want to use a lot more natural hues. The watermelons, the whites, and the translucent type colors. And then as you get to the dirtiest of water, that's where you want to get away from some of those natural hues and more into the darkest baits, like the black and blues. And then actually some of the chartreuse, the more flashy and bright and vibrant colors. Really to just attract those fish and be able to let them see it, because they're not going to be able to see things that are even this far in front of them in some situations. And that brings me to my next point. Well, before we get to my next point, actually, the other thing that you need to think about is, besides water clarity, sun penetration can actually have a big effect on this as well. So if you have yourself in a situation where you have super clear water and the sun is up, well, that's going to make that clear water even harder to fish. And why is that? Because the fish are going to have even better view of your baits. And then vice versa, when you have overcast, that's actually going to help you quite a bit, because they're not going to have quite as good of that sense of sight, and so they might not be able to tell that your lure is in fact a lure, and they might actually eat it. But then when you get yourself in, dirtiest of water situations, that's where it's like you have really, really low light plus dirty water. Those fish can't see a thing, so you need to use the other things in your advantage to catch those fish. What I mean by that is my next point. I'm finally getting to my next point, and that is that in clear water, obviously we know that fish focus on their sight to feed. But as you get dirtier and dirtier and dirtier, they're going to start relying more heavily on their other senses, that being their lateral line. You know how a bass has a black line going down its side, and you can faintly see like an actual line? That's their lateral line, and what that does is it can pick up on the sound and the vibration of lures. So let's think about a chatterbait. You know how a chatterbait, when you pull it through the water, it really just vibrates back and forth and just grrr, you can kind of just feel it, your rod tip shaking. That is vibration. And so this black and blue chatterbait right here is like a very, very good lure for dark, dark, dirty, muddy water. Now on the other side of things, would I be throwing this in crystal clear water? Probably not. In some situations it'll work. I'm not going to say it won't, but generally speaking, this is a fantastic muddy water bait. So as you start to think about that, let's start to think about how that affects other presentation styles. Let's talk about speed of retrieve. Why is this important? Well, I'm going to talk about this because it's something that I didn't always realize, and I never really thought about until it started to click back in college when I was doing more of the college fishing scene, is your speed of retrieve really is dictated a lot of times by the water clarity. So if you're in a situation where you have super, super clear water, what would you think you need to do? Do you want to fish slow? Do you want to fish fast? I'm going to tell you right now that 99% of the time you want to fish a lot faster in clear water than you do in muddy water, because you don't want those fish to get a really good look of what you're doing, because if they can see this little fluke right here twitching through that clear water, and you're twitching it really, really slow, and they can come up and just look at it, they're going to know that that's not real and that they don't really want to eat it. But if you're twitching it really fast, what it's going to do is it's going to mimic a shad or a bait fish that's escaping, and it's going to draw a reaction bite. And so let's apply that to other things like a jig. When you're flipping and pitching clear water, use heavier jigs. When you're flipping and pitching in muddy water, you can use a little bit lighter ones. You still want to displace as much water as possible, but if you're using that heavy one, it might sink too fast and the bass won't even get a chance to see it. Does that make sense? All right, so let's think about that. The more important things with clear water is sight, is being natural, but at the same time, you can't let them see it so much that they can clearly tell it's fake. On the other side of things, in the dirty water, that's where you want to focus on what I call water displacement. And that could be anything, like I said, the chatterbait that's really vibrating, to, with a craw, having big flappers that really displace that water. It's going to allow the bass to hone in on it and start to pick up that bait. And so, holy cowsers. All right, guys, 5 minutes went pretty quick today. I'm not gonna lie, I probably didn't get every little point across that I would have liked to, but here's the thing, this is a big topic. So if you have any further questions, comments, concerns, drop those in the comments below and I will follow up with you. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend and we'll catch you next time.